I have the personal opinion, and this is my personal opinion that other people disagree with me. I think that we should not have 3 license classes in Australia. I think we should only have 2. And I just think we just don't have the need to have 3. That's just me. I kind of like it. It makes sense to have if you upped the foundation a little bit with the as the entry level license with the requirements, and then you moved standard down a little bit because, as I said, there's quite a big jump between the two. If you narrowed that jump a little bit, and that's relatively easy because you basically just share questions between the pools, basically, and just make sure that they're divvied up evenly. Then you would have 2 license classes. You'd have 1 method of upgrade because the amount of people that don't upgrade from foundation is huge. Like there's heaps of people that just don't bother upgrading. And even standard, there's heaps of people that are standards and they just don't bother upgrading. Because the number of foundation licenses is just on the rise. Standard's plateauing and advanced is falling. So it just makes sense to go to 2. That's just my personal opinion. Some people that have been in the game longer than me disagree, which is fine. But it's proven you over there in New Zealand, you've got 1 license class. It seems to work. I don't know what you think about that or what role you think.
I just think hey Rolly, I just think it's obviously it's a balancing act, right? It's for sure a balancing act. You don't just want everybody to have at it. There needs to be some skin in the game, but it can't be so hard that no one does it. And you've got to get it right because if you don't, then people either they're just never going to get there. But people, they need to play with the things. You want to get people interested in ham radio, you got to give them all the stuff. You got to give them privileges. They're going to need to be able to do fun stuff on HF. They need to be able to do stuff. So if you're unreasonably restrictive with it, you're turning people off because they can't do the fun stuff. So I think I don't know, especially when you consider that technically speaking, anyone can just broadcast illegally. When you really look at it from a practical perspective, the mere fact that someone's shown up and tried to do a test, I think speaks to, some level of maturity. I think it's important that we whether we teach people stuff and they learn some stuff, but I don't see the need to really bloody whittle them down and, crack them with a cane if they make a mistake. You know what I mean? I think we need some buy-in. There needs to be some buy-in. We've got to educate them in some way, but ultimately we want the hobby to thrive and do really well and grow. And so to do that, we need to give people access to the cool stuff. Having 1, there are pros and there are cons, obviously. It does make I guarantee ours is not as easy as the tech or the foundation or whatever. There's a lot of stuff in there. But there's a lot to be said for just the simplicity of it.
Rowley's made an interesting comment about this us versus them, and this is something that I think that we end up. I don't think it's so much I might be wrong here. The guys in the US might be able to answer this, but it seems to here in VK that there's a lot of us versus them when it comes to foundation. And I think the gap is starting to close a little bit now because what happened was we segregated foundation licenses with F calls. They were 4-letter F calls. Which was a stupid idea from the beginning because they didn't think about future if they wanted to use digital modes, which inevitably was going to happen because of how popular it is. So then what they did was they dropped the 4-digit F call and they moved it to whatever call sign that's available in a 3-letter pool. So two-letter suffixes, are only available to advanced licensees. Pretty much everything else is free game with some exceptions with 3 letters. So what would happen is people would hear foundation licensees on the air and they would be like, I don't want to talk to them because that's a foundation license or some foundation license holder or something like that.
Bro.
Whereas now you can't really tell because everyone's got 3-letter random calls and no one can be bothered looking it up. So
So it
I
should be.
think, and then again, yeah, as Chris said, foundation is pretty restrictive because restricted to 10 watts. If you compare it to the entry level license in the US, if you're a technician, you can put out 1,500 watts on 2 meters or 70 centimeters if you really want to. Again, same thing. Wanted standard, but it was just too hard, so you gave up for 10 years. So you don't want that kind of stuff. And credit to you too for persisting and for actually getting out and getting it.
Amen. Awesome.
And
Yeah.
Mike talking about the high license fees, like
It is a bit
absolutely,
price, yeah.
it costs you like $200. Like
And it's
if
annual, eh?
you're
You guys
starting
get,
out,
is it? Do you guys have to pay an annual fee?
yeah, plus that,
Yeah.
plus that,
Come on.
which is like $51, and then that's going to be dropped when the class license comes in, which they've delayed, and then we've recently found out that repeater licensees, which you still have to pay a fee for, we're going to have to pay a $4 tax basically, or a $4 fee for every transmit frequency we have on a repeater license. So that means my repeater licenses have gone up 65% this year.
Yeah.
Jody talks about Canada, basic two tier licensing. Yeah.
If you score well on the test, you get very good HF privileges. Interesting.
Yep. I think that's that's good. It seems to be a good model that works well. Canada's probably very similar to Australia, I reckon, in what we should. See, we pinch the foundation license from the UK, but again, the UK's, a substantial size bigger, and
Sure is.
Canada's probably a bit more of a model that we should have followed. I think a lot of people too, they look at ham radio and they're like, okay, so what's the difference between CB radio? And you try to explain it to them. And then once you say, well, you need a license for it, they're like, nah, I'm not interested. And like you said, you don't want to take away that requirement. You still want to keep that. But at the same time, you want to make it accessible enough for those who are interested to be able to, do something about it. So,
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. And I think, honestly, I mean, I don't know. I think it's better being if you're gonna play the balance game, which you should. I, as an idiot that no one cares about, I think it should be slightly easier. If you're worried about erring and it's like you're gonna err either side, I'd err slightly easier than slightly hard because I think you're going to end up with a net positive. These are
yeah.
people that want to pay money, they want to learn, they want to do it the right way, they want to get their ticket. I wouldn't, I'd do everything I could to make them successful.